Welcome to the Courage to Live podcast. My name is Josh Bitskill, and I'm a retired police captain with 24 years of experience out of Las Vegas. Currently, I travel the country and I teach people about leadership, resilience, and courage. Joined by my wife and co-host, Jenna.
Hi.
And this is a continuation of our last podcast where we kind of broke down the Uvalde Robb elementary school shooting, gave some details and some tactics and, some of the failings on that. And we wanted to do a follow-up on how to have the right mindset and also talk about the first officer on the scene was recently acquitted of all 29 child abandonment, child endangerment charges. Kind of give our opinion on that. I will say currently I am in the middle of traveling all over the country. So taking a break to record some podcasts. But I'm going to be in Florida and Washington, D.C. Wait, don't tell me.
Okay.
I'll think of the rest. Utah.
There's one more before that.
Oh, Arizona.
Yeah.
Back in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And then I close it out at a dinosaur hotel in Utah.
On your birthday.
On my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by dinosaur hotel, he means a brontosaurus that's probably from 1943 when that hotel was built. I don't know when it was built, but the dinosaur has seen better days.
And I don't think brontosauruses are real, right?
What?
I think brontosauruses, they said, weren't ever actually real dinosaurs.
Are you serious? I've never heard that.
Yeah, I think that was like misnamed and now it's like Gigantosaurus or something like that. I don't think brontosaurus is a real dinosaur.
But did they have long necks?
Yeah, that's just, it was a different species of dinosaur. I don't know. Don't fact check that.
I don't even think dinosaurs really exist.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, before we
I'm
go
not
down,
allowed to speak of these things on this podcast.
Before we go down the conspiracy.
Wait till you see my sweatshirt for the next episode.
Jeez. Yep. So anyway, off the conspiracies and on to Uvalde.
Tragedy.
Yeah. So yeah, last episode we broke down kind of the nuts and bolts of what happened in Uvalde. And in this one, we have that's why we're talking about it now, is the officer, the first arriving officer, Adrian Gonzalez, was charged with 29 counts of child endangerment, child abandonment.
One count. So I was wrong. It wasn't 40. It was in the last. I'm going to correct myself from the last podcast so that Sir from LinkedIn doesn't come after me. He was charged with 29 felony counts of child abandonment and child endangerment, one count for each child killed or injured, based on allegations that he failed to follow active shooter training by not immediately confronting the gunman as the shooting unfolded.
Well, yeah, and then Arredondo was charged with 11 counts, which is, I think, where you got the
right. That's I
40 from.
Yeah.
So
sorry, LinkedIn man.
Yeah, sorry, LinkedIn man.
I need to give him a name.
What was the one on one of the tabletops they said? Was it like Chester or Clyde?
Right.
Clyde in their jurisdiction cost him a bunch of headaches. So Clyde is now LinkedIn man who doesn't like us. I'm sure there's more than one, but we'll sorry, Clyde, for the mistake. We'll make sure we don't do it again.
Yeah. We're going to share a lot of opinions today, so he should be satisfied.
Yeah, or he won't like the opinions, and then yeah. So again, he was the first on the scene. He arrived, made contact with school employees who were giving him information on like where the suspect was, what had happened, and basically start begging him to go stop the shooter.
Correct.
Right. And he decided to call this out as a barricade, as I mentioned in the last, which you don't rush forward on. And I think there's a lot of mindset that goes into that, right? I think our brain can play tricks on us and say, "Oh, this is a barricade because you're trying to protect yourself, right? You're trying not to do the hard thing."
I'm sure nobody wants to run in and face their own mortality in that way.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a tough decision.
It's scary, right?
As you know.
As I know. And because of his failure to act, he was ultimately criminally charged. And during the trial, I think it was like 9 days of testimony. They had expert witnesses, family members of some of the victims come in and tell their story. And I mean, obviously, I can't even imagine being in that courtroom, even as an observer for that long, how emotionally heavy it would have been. I mean, you're talking about the worst of the worst, right? Like that kids, like that is that, and being confronted with your failure of action. And I think that would be very difficult for anybody. And also, just like I said, being an observer there and hearing the emotion on people's voices and the gravity of what they're talking about. And the, I think the defense's whole case or whole, like what they were saying was there were 376 officers on this that also didn't act.
Correct. That he was unfairly singled out as a scapegoat for a much broader law enforcement failure that involved hundreds of officers.
Yeah. And I mean, I can almost see like what else was going on in their training and their policies and all of that, that all these officers failed to act. And I think that we talked about the lack of leadership and diffusion of command in the last one and kind of explaining that, not excusing it. But that being said, taking this one situation, this one officer, his failure to act, um, I'll tell you that I don't think it was a wrong decision to charge him criminally.
I don't either.
And why I say that is like my whole career, when I was a new officer, when I was in the academy, everybody would always say, "Oh, this is a job that if you don't act, you don't do what you're supposed to do, you could end up in jail." And I've seen officers end up in jail for uses of force and stuff like that, but I haven't seen it for somebody that was, failed to act. But that was always said, "Oh, this job is so serious that you could be criminally charged if you don't act." And like I can,
Well, as you should, because you're taking an oath when you decide to become a police officer. You are taking an oath that you will do that, right?
Mhm.
You're making a promise that you understand that that's part of the job and that you're willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, like personally, if not that I would fail to act. I mean, I have not
Not
in the past failed to act. Um, but if for some reason that was me, I don't know how I could live with myself. I would be like, yeah, throw me in jail. I deserve it.
Mhm.
I mean, even the guilt that I have for some of the things that I've been on that I beat myself up on because I thought, oh, could I have been faster? Could I have made better decisions? Even though the outcome was, you know, favorable
Right.
for this situation, I still beat myself up over it. So it's hard to, you know, put myself in that person's shoes. I'm going to fight. And maybe if I was, I would, I don't know. But I can tell you that like personally, yeah, he should have been criminally charged.
Well, Mr. Gonzalez appears to I'm not saying he doesn't have any guilt. I'm sure he does. But when the verdict was reached and he was acquitted on all charges, which I find, I guess you couldn't just charge him with one and not any of the other 28. But I find it truly wild that he was acquitted, but that's neither here nor there. After the trial, he thanked the jury and said he stood by his actions that day. Scale of 1 to 10, when I read that last night, how mad was I? Because, I mean, I can't imagine having a tragedy like that happen and being first on the scene. Okay, he stands by that he called it a barricade, but you still can't acknowledge that that was the wrong decision. You can't say to these victims' families, I made the wrong call. Nope, I stand by my actions, but I'm very sorry it happened. Like,
Yeah.
ew.
No,
Ew.
that's hard for me to wrap my head around. Like I can sit and say I can name every mistake I've made on pretty much every critical incident, and I don't hide those. I want to help other people with those mistakes that I made. I stand in front of rooms of hundreds of thousands of people where I talk about specific mistakes I made and how not to make those same mistakes. So to say I stand by my actions, like that's a hard pill to swallow. On top of getting acquitted in the first place, I'll say I don't think you should have been. That's my opinion.
No.
But on top of that, to then afterwards not show like remorse, remorse for your actions, like
when you have it's not just you and I sitting in our bedroom calling, saying that this guy made the wrong call. The DOJ, which that's a whole other mess, but they themselves said this was clearly not a barricaded subject. So you have pretty much the entire country can see that this is not a barricaded subject after the fact. And you're going to go through a whole trial. And then what you say at the end is, I stand by my decision. Like,
Yeah.
I can't.
And that's the thing. I can't find fault in, well, why am I getting charged when the other 370 something officers weren't?
Sure.
Or, was there an issue with training, how they were training, how they were prepared?
Yes,
All of
there
those
was.
things. Yes.
Yeah.
However, that being said, you have a gun, you have a badge, people are dying, go through all of that. Like, so to sit around and say, are there mitigating factors to his guilt? Sure. But aside from everything else, like you said earlier, you put your hand in the air and swore in front of your friends and family and God and all that you would protect the community, and then you didn't. But you say you stand by that. That's a hard pill for me to swallow. It really is.
What's going to be even harder is if he then goes back to policing.
Yeah, I would be shocked.
I don't know. Are you? We had failures on 1 October and people that didn't act who got fired and then got their jobs back for not acting.
Yeah. I just think like something of this scale like that, where there was a criminal trial involved. But again, stranger things have happened. You're right.
And I feel like I would respect people more if in this scenario, okay, so you're a police officer, you have something tragic like this happen, you don't act. I would respect people who then at that point say, you know what, maybe I'm not cut out for this. I thought I was, but I'm not. And they go and find another profession. We've known people that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I think I struggle with people that fail to act and then continue to do that job. That is very scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then to go to the chief, whose case they still don't have a date for it. There's been a bunch of like litigation and stays and all of that. But he was the chief for the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department at the time of the shooting. And he was also criminally charged. But his case is ongoing. But there was a statement that, because he was charged with the child abandonment and endangerment.
Only 10 counts though.
Okay.
Because I think I could not find how they came up with that 10.
I don't know if those were the ones that they identified after he arrived.
Showed up.
Yeah.
I guess.
But it says his attorney has publicly said Arredondo believed he and other officers did nothing wrong in their response.
I can't.
Like,
I'm not.
That's the hard part. Like I said, it's like, okay, you could admit to mistakes and say, but charging criminally might be egregious or whatever for your defense. But to sit there and plead, because honestly, obviously I have some strong emotions about that first officer on scene. I don't know his training. I don't know his background. I don't know all of that. I know he had a gun and a badge. But beyond that, you're a chief of police. So you're experienced. You have the authority, the training, the tools to act. You're a chief of police of a school district. So you should have, at this point, been thinking about what you're going to do on an active shooter and what it's going to look like and what it's going to feel like, and still make the decisions or no decisions at all. Everybody in there is probably already dead. That was his.
Yeah.
During his interviews, what he said. And they weren't. And so now to know after everything to still say we did nothing wrong, again, it's kind of gross, to be honest.
That's why I'm saying you.
Yeah.
Well, and the part that gets me is the defense talking about how it's a broader, they're blaming it on a broader systemic issue. And it's like, okay, that might be the case. But so that means that he shouldn't be criminally charged, that there should be no consequences for any of their actions because it's a broader systemic issue. That also is a little bit crazy to me.
Well, on top of that, and I've seen this time and time again in many aspects of policing, I wasn't trained to do that. So, I didn't receive the proper training to do this one thing. But
Well,
you
every police officer receives active shooter training, correct?
at different levels, there's some small agencies that don't invest in that. So I'm not going to blanket say they don't have maybe the same training I have. Right. I've been the basic one that the department teaches. I've been to SWAT school and all of these things. But with that being said, go get the training yourself.
Right.
There's plenty of companies out there that do training. I'm friends with some guy named Andrew. I can't remember his last name, a former Navy SEAL that does this type of training. And yeah, pay your $400 and go to training yourself. Like it still blows my mind that, that we have access to so much and invest in yourself and your own training to become a better cop. Because, I'm a school district chief, I'm a school district cop. There's a good chance that I'm going to be one that is on scene or arrives to something like this. So I need to be prepared.
Well, yeah. And shame on this chief for being the chief of a school district, knowing that an active shooter at a school is a probability and not investing, because that was part of the DOJ report, right? Was that they did not have the proper training. None of them did. And so shame on him for being the leader of that organization and not investing in the training that he should have for his own people.
Well, and on top of that, I look at the videos from inside the school and I see all the different cops and all their tactical gear, different mismatches. They have the 511 plate carriers, cry gear, the Daniel defense rifle that probably cost $2,500 plus all the little gadgets they put on it. So they invested in that stuff.
Yeah, that makes them look like cool guys.
Yeah, I mean, I had all of it too.
You were a cool guy.
Not anymore. I'm an old guy now. But okay, I'll invest in all that. But when it comes to preparing myself for it, that's the agency's job to do.
Right.
And yeah, I agree. But if they're not doing it, go out there and get the training yourself. And on top of that, the tactical training, then there's the mindset training.
And if you need that, we know a guy.
I do that.
We know a company. It's called Bitsko Consulting.
Go visit our website.
Yes.
Reach out, send a message. I'll let you know where our next training is. But that is a gap I see more often than the tactical training, because most, like I said, I can't speak to every department's training, but I travel a lot. I'm with the other departments. I ask them about their active shooter training, and a lot of them get that. They get very similar to what I got. I'm sure there's small agencies of 10, 12 people that haven't, but
well, that's kind of why we started this company, is that we noticed there was a gap in training, and police officers, like you say it all the time in your class, you're standing up in front of a room full of strangers and you say, I could grab 5 of you right now and we could make a stack and we could go take out an active shooter, most likely, right? Because everybody has very similar active shooter training since Columbine. When I say everybody, I say most police officers. Apparently there's smaller agencies that don't active shooter train, which is truly wild to me.
Yeah.
With where we are at in this country.
Yeah, because active shooter incidents are not just big city problems.
No.
Not,
I mean, we're talking about Uvalde, Texas. I could not show you where that is on a map. Yeah. Josh can't even show you where Texas is.
I can pick Texas. Ask me to pick out like Missouri and I'm going to have a hard time. I think it's a square and I think it's somewhere in the middle of the country, but
geography is not his strong suit.
Not even close.
But anyways,
we digress.
We digress. So active shooter training is pretty standard as far as the tactics, the tactical side of it. But we started this company because there was a real gap in there is no training for mindset. And so that's what we have set out to do, because having been the tactical element on the largest mass shooting in U.S. history, having been the incident commander over a mass stabbing on the Strip where 8 people were stabbed, and then incident commander over an active shooter at UNLV where 3 professors were killed and 1 was injured, you have, not by, your own doing, but you've been forced to develop a mindset that can get you through a critical incident while still performing your job, which is clearly evident that I obviously there were a lot of things that happened in Uvalde. There was, as we've discussed, the lack of everything, right? But most importantly, I think there was a gap in the training of their mindset. They didn't have one, it appears.
Well, and what we set out to do is to try and fill that gap. Well, we worked with police researchers and shout out to Dr. Tamara Harold and psychologists
And Dr. Tenney.
and Dr. Tenney and people to help kind of give us real science-based ways to overcome the most common emotions you feel. Because again, we all know what to do for most of us, but it's the how to do it when you're feeling stress, when you're feeling fear, when you're feeling anxiety. And so, we develop those tools to overcome the physiological effects of these difficult emotions and then the emotional regulation needed. And I do think that type of mindset. So, listen, Dr. Gilmartin wrote books even when I was in the academy about the warrior mindset, and it's really good stuff.
He's still speaking.
I do. Yeah. And it's really good stuff. But I wanted to continue off of that of like, okay, you have the warrior mindset, but what's next? What if that doesn't work for you? What are some real tactics and tools that you can use in the moment to push past the difficult nature of what you're about to do?
Well, and first and foremost, it's knowing that you are going to feel hard emotions on a critical incident. You're going to feel fear. You're going to feel anxiety. You're going to want to freeze, right? You're going to feel an array, maybe one of those, maybe all of them, but you're going to feel that. And so one, understanding that you're going to feel it so that you can prepare to mitigate your responses to those emotions in the moment. So very briefly, because this is, if you want to know more and get more in depth on it, Josh writes extensively in his book on all of these things, but so fear being one.
Yeah. So primarily, fear, there are ways to navigate through fear. You can't be fearless. You can't have, you see I've been to police week and you see all the devil whispered in my ear, you can't handle the storm. And he responds, I am the storm or whatever. That's not realistic, right? In the moment when you're feeling fear, you can't just picture whispering back to the devil. But, there are ways to, including breath work that I talk about in the book, to control your breathing, crisis rehearsal while you're on your way, like different things. Once you're able to identify that's what you're even feeling in the moment, that you can control the physiological effects of that emotion. Because again, as humans, regardless of your belief system, whether you believe we were created or evolved to have these emotions, we had those to protect us. But as law enforcement officers, we have to push past that. And we have to expect it. We have to be able to prepare for it and then navigate through it. Again, overcoming or, getting rid of fear, being fearless, that's just not realistic. And if that's your expectation when you do feel it, then you're more likely to freeze. Right? So,
which is obviously was a huge issue on this incident in particular.
Well, yeah, right? I spotted that the first time I watched Arredondo's interviews after, and he's like, led by, I know we're going to be criticized by not making entry, and then
but we stand by this decision.
Yeah. But that we're going to be criticized, but I was calling it a barricade, and I figured everybody was already dead, and that's just somebody making excuses for not acting, for freezing in that moment.
But not just him. We talked on the last podcast about how none of those officers, whether that was they were following commands, that might have been part of it, but I do think there was an element of a lot of officers freezing and not taking action. So what if, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts, but for new listeners, if you are a first responder and your inclination is to freeze, what do you suggest?
So we do have what we call the Oaks method, which I go in depth in my class, even on our online class. But if I were to distill it down to one thing of all of that can help a listener right now, if you focus on the big thing you have to do, then that can cause you to become overwhelmed and freeze, rather than breaking it up into small chunks of what you have to do. there's a shooter in this classroom. What do I have to do? Okay, I have my gun out. I have multiple officers form a team. Communicate with dispatch what we're doing. Um, Move forward towards the door. Have somebody breach the door, open it up. We're going to make entry, locate the suspect, engage them unless they give up or whatever that is. So breaking things up into small chunks, and it's where I talk about keep going, keeping that forward momentum. May not feel like you're going fast, but as long as you're moving forward, you're doing what you need to do. You're not freezing, you're winning. So, and there's a whole lot more to that I get into in the class or even in the book. But truly, that is how you can overcome that tactical paralysis, that feeling that you want to freeze. And guess what? It's not just related to active shooters. It's any critical incident. It's also in life, in business, and whatever's happening in front of you. That freeze, it's fight or flight or freeze. That is a natural response. And breaking the big thing you have to do up into smaller things and keeping that forward momentum is the way through it. And it's going to be scary and you're going to feel anxiety and you're going to not want to fail and all of that. If you focus on the small task at hand and keep moving forward, you'll end up being successful. And having that realization that I'm going into a room with a guy with a rifle. I could get shot, I could get killed, and what we've talked about is, but what are my values? What happens if I don't do that? And that's what these officers are experiencing now. Whether it's being criminally charged, whether it's living with the guilt, living with what you're living with. I know that failure to act in crisis can make PTSD symptoms so much worse because you weren't fighting through it. So, yeah, there are ways that you can continue that forward momentum and, ultimately be successful and be able to live with yourself after.
So last thing I think we should talk about. So if you are a police officer and you've been on a critical incident and you froze or didn't act, what advice besides what you just said for how to mitigate it in the moment, but what advice would you give to those police officers now to help them, because you can go either one of two ways. You can fix that, right? You can do the work so that you don't do that in critical incidents, or you decide that maybe this isn't the career for you. But for those who want to fix it, what else do you suggest not in the moment?
Yeah. So if you felt that you froze on something, maybe it wasn't to the point of like a Uvalde where it's on national news and, you can't go out to dinner without people recognizing you and all of that. But I would say invest in yourself. And there's two parts to this. Number one is becoming an expert in your craft, whatever that is. You're a patrol officer, be the best patrol officer you can be. Find any and all training. So when you're confronted, there's no question on how to do or what you need to do. No active shooters inside and out. No, whatever that incident was, know how to, set up for a barricade or, car stops or anything else. You should be an expert in your craft if you're going to do a job that you can die. And if you fail or other people can die. So that's part of it. The other part is learning about yourself. Why did you freeze in the first place? Was it because you weren't trained? Was it because you truly didn't know what to do? Or was it because you knew what to do, but you didn't think you could do it? And that's where the hard work comes in. That's where, getting into therapy, learning about yourself, working through processing through the trauma of what you experienced and what it feels like to feel that you failed. But some of the best lessons I've learned was been through failure.
Yeah.
And so,
but you don't want that failure to come on a 1 October or a Uvalde. Like, I'm not saying you ever want it to come, but that's the moment that you have to be the absolute most ready for, right?
Yeah. Instead of not talking about it, use it as motivation to really invest in yourself. Like I said, find a mental health professional, work through that, develop specialized tools just for you. This is what I was feeling. How can I not feel that way? That's where finding especially a, clinician that understands police work or military or whatever that is, and really building those tools in yourself so it doesn't happen again. And then ultimately, it's gonna something like that's gonna happen again, where you're gonna have to, spur action.
Yeah.
And if you've invested in yourself enough and you become, have a very tactical mindset, and also the mindset of you're not going to quit, you're not going to freeze, you're not going to stop, you're going to continue moving forward, then you can put it into action. Honestly, I think that's the only time that you truly can heal from that, is then being confronted with a similar situation and not failing. And if you're a cop and you're out there working, you're out there showing up on the calls and you're putting the work in yourself, you'll have the opportunity. Maybe not another active shooter, but something that you have to be able to push through and push forward and apply all of that work that you've been putting in yourself. So,
Well, that concludes our 2-part Uvalde series. Maybe we'll do another episode if Aaron Dondo gets acquitted of his felony charges as well. But it's time for the salutes and salutations. So today we're saluting Dr. Tamara Harold for helping us not only with the resiliency class. She's an amazing police researcher, doctor. She now took over the problem oriented policing she's working at University of Texas. So she's the director of that now. So look her up. She's pretty cool. And then the salutations are for Adrian Gonzalez. F you very much for sticking by your decision.
Yeah.
That'll probably get edited out, but
we'll see. We'll see.
That's the salutation today.
Yeah. And I appreciate you spending some time with us. If you liked what we talked about, please share the podcast with a friend, leave a review, subscribe. And there's more in my book, The Courage to Live, available on Amazon, where I really get in depth on, how to freeze, how to make difficult decisions when you're feeling afraid, when you're feeling stressed. And I appreciate you spending time with us today.